If a woman tells you these 5 things, leave her immediately. Not out of hatred, not out of pride, but out of self-respect. Because there comes a time in a man's life when he must choose between holding on to what is hurting him or walking away to protect what remains of his soul. You were not created to be broken by words that crush your spirit. You were not placed on this earth to constantly prove your worth to someone who doesn't recognize it. When a woman looks at you and says, "I don't need a man," she's not just talking about independence. No, independence is beautiful, but this is something different. This is pride in rebellion's clothing. It's a denial of divine design, a rejection of the very foundation of partnership. 2 people are meant to need each other, not out of weakness, but out of unity. That statement, spoken in arrogance, reveals a heart that doesn't want to build, only to dominate, and that is not love. And when she looks at you and says, "You're too sensitive," what she's really saying is, "Your emotions make me uncomfortable." But you were never made to be stone. You are not a machine. You feel because you are human. God put emotion in you for a reason, to empathize, to understand, to connect. If your vulnerability is treated like a weakness, if your honesty is mocked, then the relationship is no longer a safe place. It's a battlefield, and every man deserves peace in his own home. If she ever says, "I can do better than you," listen carefully. That's not frustration talking. That's contempt. A woman who truly values you would never compare you to another. She'd never measure your worth against someone else's shadow. She would lift you when you're low, not step on you when you're already down. When someone says that to you, they are not trying to challenge you, they are trying to replace you. And if the words, "You should be grateful I'm even with you," ever leave her lips, understand this: that is not love. That is narcissism in full bloom. Real love doesn't keep score. It doesn't wave your supposed flaws in your face and ask for payment in the form of obedience. Gratitude should flow freely from both hearts, not be demanded like a tax. You are not a beggar at the gates of her affection. You are a man with value, dignity, and purpose. But perhaps the most dangerous of all, you're not a real man. That phrase cuts deeper than a blade, because it doesn't challenge your behavior, it attacks your identity. When you are calm, they call you weak. When you are patient, they call you passive. When you lead with gentleness, they call you soft. But they forget that the strongest men are not the loudest in the room. The strongest men are those who can carry burdens without breaking others in the process. You don't have to prove your manhood to someone who doesn't even understand what a real man looks like. Listen to me, words matter. Words are seeds, and if her words are poisoned, they will infect every corner of your heart. Don't ignore what's being said just because you fear being alone. You were made to be cherished. You were made to be respected. You were made to be seen, not just as a provider, not just as a protector, but as a soul. Walk away, not because you're weak, but because you're finally strong enough to know what you deserve. And remember this, love that wounds is not love at all. Real love, the kind that heals and holds, does not tear down to build itself up. It stands with you in storms. It speaks life. It makes you better, not bitter. So if she tells you these 5 things, leave. Not in anger, not in revenge, but in peace. The kind that only comes when you finally choose yourself. When a woman says, "I don't need a man," at first glance, it might sound like strength. It might come off as empowerment. And yes, there is beauty in a woman who can stand on her own, who can build her life, who knows her worth. That is not the issue. The danger lies not in independence, but in the spirit behind those words. Because sometimes those words are not spoken from a place of healing, they're spoken from a place of hurt, from past disappointments, from betrayal, from unresolved wounds that have hardened into pride. And pride disguised as power is still poison. It's a wall built high, not to protect, but to keep out love. When she says she doesn't need you, not just in a moment of emotion, but as a constant truth, she's rejecting the very essence of partnership. Two people coming together in humility, in support, in interdependence. That's how relationships were designed, not one above the other, not one dragging the other, but side by side, shoulder to shoulder. To say, "I don't need a man," with arrogance is to tear at the fabric of unity. Because love, real love, isn't about needing in a desperate way. It's about choosing one another daily with mutual respect. It's about saying, even though I can stand alone, I would rather stand with you. That is the kind of strength that builds kingdoms. That is the kind of woman who creates peace, not power struggles. But when she wears that phrase like armor, when she uses it to push you away, to make you feel small, to remind you that you are replaceable, then you must open your eyes. She may have been broken before you came, but it is not your job to bleed for wounds you did not create. It is not your role to stay in a place where love must constantly defend its presence. You were not created to fight for room in someone's heart. You were created to walk with someone who wants you there, and a woman who understands love will never belittle the blessing of having a man who wants to lead with integrity, love with patience, and protect with honor. So when she says, "I don't need a man," listen closely, not just to her words, but to the heart behind them. If it's independence, support her. But if it's rebellion, if it's rejection masked as confidence, if it's spoken to tear you down rather than build something with you, then you must ask yourself one question. What kind of love am I really standing in? Because love was never meant to be a battlefield where one wins and the other loses. It was meant to be a covenant where both rise together. When she looks at you and says you're too sensitive, it might seem like a passing comment, something small, something you should just shake off. But don't be so quick to brush it aside, because buried in those words is a subtle strike at the core of your humanity. Sensitivity is not weakness. Sensitivity means your heart is alive. It means you feel deeply, you care deeply, and you're not afraid to connect with your emotions. That is not something to be ashamed of. That is something to be honored. But in a world that often celebrates hardness, silence, and emotional detachment, men who express their pain or speak their truth are seen as too much. And when a woman throws that phrase at you, it can be her way of silencing your voice. It's a form of emotional manipulation because it flips the narrative. You're no longer someone expressing real hurt or concern. Instead, you're labeled as dramatic, soft, or unstable. It shifts the focus away from the harm that was done and places blame on you for reacting to it. It becomes a trap where you're punished not for what you did, but for how you felt. And over time, if you hear it enough, you begin to question yourself. You start to wonder if maybe you are too sensitive. You stop bringing things up. You silence your discomfort. You shrink in silence because every time you speak, you're made to feel like you're the problem. That's how manipulation works. It rewrites your reality until you no longer trust your own voice. But hear this, your emotions matter. Your tears are valid. Your silence, your frustration, your pain, they all come from somewhere. Don't let anyone tell you that being in touch with your heart is a flaw. A real connection allows space for feeling. A healthy relationship is one where both people can bring their full selves to the table, not just the parts that are easy to deal with. A woman who truly loves you will never mock your vulnerability. She will hold it gently, not weaponize it. She will never make you feel like less of a man for feeling like one, because real strength is not found in how well you suppress your emotions. Real strength is found in the courage to be honest with them. So when those words are thrown at you, you're too sensitive, don't just hear what's being said. Look at what's being done. If your feelings are constantly dismissed, if your soul is constantly denied a safe space to breathe, then you're not in a relationship, you're in a performance. One where you're only allowed to show the parts that keep the peace, not the parts that speak the truth. And you are not made to live like that. You deserve to be seen, fully, deeply, honestly. So never let someone shame you for being exactly what God created you to be, a man with a heart that feels. When she says, "I can do better than you," those words don't just carry the sting of comparison, they carry the weight of contempt. It's not just a statement of frustration, it's a declaration that she no longer sees your value. And once respect is gone, the foundation of love begins to crack. That phrase doesn't motivate, it humiliates. It's not an invitation to grow, it's a weapon to wound. In a healthy relationship, partners push each other to become better, not by tearing each other down, but by lifting each other up. But when someone uses your shortcomings as ammunition, when your flaws are magnified to elevate their own sense of superiority, it stops being love. It becomes a silent competition where you are constantly losing. And let's be honest, every person has flaws. Every man has moments of struggle. Every journey has seasons of weakness. But the one who truly loves you doesn't throw those weaknesses in your face. She stands beside you. She reminds you of your potential, not your failures. Because real love doesn't say, "I can do better than you." Real love says, "We can become better together." When a woman starts measuring your worth against imaginary options, when she starts treating you like a placeholder until something better comes along, she is no longer building with you, she is preparing to replace you. She may still share your space, your bed, your name, but her heart has already packed its bags. And if you're not careful, you'll start to believe her. You'll start to believe that you're not good enough, that you're unworthy, that you're lucky just to be tolerated. But that is a lie. You were never meant to beg for affirmation in the arms of someone who belittles you. You were meant to grow in the presence of someone who believes in you, even when you don't believe in yourself. You see, respect is the soil where love takes root. Without it, the relationship becomes a constant storm, and your soul begins to erode. The moment she speaks those words with intention, the moment she starts using comparison as a tool of control, something sacred is being broken. And you don't have to stay in that place. You don't have to prove your worth to someone who can't see it. You don't have to keep chasing the approval of a woman who's already decided she can do better. Because the truth is, if she could truly do better, she would have already gone. But sometimes those words are not even about you. They're about her own emptiness, her own insecurity, her own hunger for something she can't even name. And no matter what you do, it will never be enough. Because the lack isn't in you, it's in her. So let that phrase be a turning point, not for anger, not for revenge, but for release. Let it remind you that any love that makes you feel lesser is not love at all. You were not created to be compared, you were created to be cherished. And the one who sees your true worth will never have to be convinced to stay. When she says you should be grateful I'm even with you, it might sound like confidence, but in reality, it's a warning sign. That phrase is not love speaking, that is control disguised as superiority. It's not spoken to inspire thankfulness, it's spoken to make you feel small. Gratitude in a relationship should never be used as a chain. It should flow freely between two people who recognize the value in each other, not hang over your head like a threat. But when someone begins to speak as if their presence is a favor they've granted you, as if you are beneath them, as if you've somehow won a prize you never deserved, they aren't loving you, they're managing you. They're keeping you in a state of quiet submission, afraid to speak up, afraid to ask for more, afraid to be your full self. Love should never be transactional. It should never feel like something you have to earn every single day just to be allowed to stay. You are not a burden. You are not beneath her. And anyone who makes you feel like you're lucky just to breathe in their direction has already decided they're better than you. That kind of thinking doesn't create unity. It creates a hierarchy. One where you're constantly trying to prove your worth, constantly trying to catch up, constantly made to feel like you're the one who's supposed to be thankful while she simply exists. That is not partnership. That is narcissistic control. It's a power play designed to break your confidence so you stop asking for what you need and start settling for what you're given. And the longer you stay under that kind of emotional pressure, the more you start to believe it. You start to lower your expectations. You start to accept crumbs and call it a feast. But deep down, you know something isn't right. You feel it every time you hesitate to speak your mind. Every time you silence your own desires. Every time you look in the mirror and wonder how you got so far from who you used to be. Let me tell you something clearly. A woman who truly loves you will never make you feel like you owe her your existence. She will never act as though she's doing you a favor by being in your life. She will want to be there, not because she has to, not because she feels superior, but because she sees your heart, your value, your soul. And she chooses you again and again with humility. And if you are constantly being reminded that you're lucky to have her, while she forgets that she's also lucky to have you, then what you're in is not love. It's emotional imprisonment dressed up as romance. Don't be afraid to walk away from a place where you're tolerated, not celebrated. Don't be afraid to believe that you are worthy of a love that doesn't make you feel small just so someone else can feel big. The right person will never make you feel like you're unworthy of them. They will make you feel grateful together, not indebted alone. You deserve a love that reminds you of your worth, not one that constantly questions it. When she says, "You're not a real man," she's not just throwing words in a moment of anger. She's attacking your very identity. That statement doesn't correct behavior. It assaults the foundation of who you are. And few things cut deeper than having your manhood questioned by someone who once said they loved you. A real man isn't defined by noise, by aggression, or by dominance. A real man is defined by discipline, responsibility, courage, and humility. But when those qualities don't match someone's shallow expectations, when your silence is mistaken for weakness, your kindness for softness, your patience for passivity, suddenly your manhood is put on trial by someone who doesn't even understand what it truly means. Words like that don't come from a place of love. They come from a desire to control, to manipulate, to provoke. They're thrown out in moments where respect has already left the room. And when respect is gone, love becomes a weapon, not a shelter. You don't have to yell to be a man. You don't have to fight to be a man. You don't have to crush your emotions or bury your soul to fit into some distorted image of masculinity. Being a man means leading with wisdom, standing firm in truth, being present even when it's hard, and protecting without crushing. And if someone can't see that, if they confuse loudness with strength and coldness with authority, they're not rejecting your flaws, they're rejecting your very essence. You see, the most dangerous part of that phrase is not just that it's said, it's that you might start to believe it. You might start to second guess your value. You might start to perform instead of live, to act instead of be, to shrink your heart just to fit her broken standard. And that's how identity is slowly stolen, not in one moment, but in 100 moments where you let someone else define you. But let me remind you, you were made with purpose. You were created with strength that doesn't have to shout to be felt. You are not less of a man because you feel, because you care, because you lead with love instead of fear. You are not less of a man because you choose peace over pride. So when she says, "You're not a real man," recognize what's really happening. She's not calling you out. She's projecting her own pain, her own disappointment, her own misunderstanding of what a man should be. Don't let that lie settle in your heart. You don't need to prove your manhood to anyone who uses shame as a measuring stick. Walk away from the voices that try to reduce you to a stereotype. Walk toward the truth that you are a man not because someone says it, but because you live it every day, quietly, consistently, and with honor. That's something no insult can ever take away. True love never speaks with contempt. It doesn't roll its eyes when you're vulnerable. It doesn't sigh with disgust when you make a mistake. It doesn't mock, belittle, or weaponize your flaws. Contempt is not correction, it is corrosion. It slowly eats away at connection, trust, and affection until what once was beautiful becomes unbearable. When someone speaks to you with contempt, they are no longer seeing you as an equal. They are speaking from a place of superiority, from a heart that has closed itself off to grace. The moment a person starts to speak to you as if you are beneath them, as if your voice, your presence, your very existence is a burden, they are no longer loving you, they are using you as a place to pour their own unresolved pain. Real love does not humiliate. It does not make you feel small in order to feel big. True love is careful with its words. It understands that words can build or break. It knows that the tongue can be a flame or a fountain, and it chooses life every time. A person who truly loves you will not make jokes at your expense in front of others. They will not call you names when they're angry. They will not dismiss your dreams or laugh at your insecurities. Because love, real love, honors, and even in disagreement, even in frustration, true love remains anchored in respect. It knows how to confront without crushing, how to correct without condemning, because love is not about always being right, it's about always being kind. Doesn't need to win every argument. It seeks peace, not power. Contempt, on the other hand, is a sign that the heart has turned cold. It's a sign that bitterness has taken root, that the relationship has shifted from unity to rivalry. When you find yourself constantly defending your worth, when your voice is met with sarcasm and your presence feels like a problem to be tolerated instead of a gift to be cherished, understand this: what you're experiencing is not love. It may have once been love. It may still carry the shape of love. But love without respect is an empty shell. It cannot stand. You deserve more than someone who keeps you around but tears you down. You deserve more than silent treatment, eye rolls, cutting words, and withheld affection. You were not made to survive in a relationship where your soul is slowly shrinking. You were made to thrive in love that lifts you, that sees the best in you, that chooses compassion over criticism. So don't ignore the signs. Don't silence your own spirit just to keep the peace. Peace built on contempt is not peace. It's quiet destruction. True love never speaks with contempt, because true love knows the power of the tongue. It speaks life, it speaks healing, it speaks hope. And when you find that kind of love, you'll never have to question your worth. You'll feel it in every word, every look, every moment. Because love that is real doesn't wound, it restores. So hear this and hear it well. Love is not meant to strip you of your dignity. It is not meant to twist your identity, to drain your confidence, or to turn your heart into a battlefield. Love is sacred, love is weighty, love is meant to be a place of rest, not war. When a woman says things like, "I don't need a man, you're too sensitive, I can do better than you should be grateful I'm even with you," or "You're not a real man," she is not just expressing emotion, she is revealing her posture toward you. And if her words constantly cut, if they belittle and control, if they distort your worth and call it honesty or strength, then understand this: love may still be in her mouth, but it has long since left her heart. There is a difference between a moment of frustration and a pattern of contempt. The first can be healed with humility. The second will slowly destroy your soul. And you were never meant to live beneath someone's pride, to shrink so they can stand tall, to be molded by shame instead of shaped by grace. Walk with someone who values your heart. Stay with someone who sees your strength, even in your silence. Choose a relationship where respect is not earned through suffering, but given freely, because that is what love does. True love doesn't humiliate. It doesn't play games. It doesn't twist your emotions and call it power. True love speaks life. It honors, it builds, it heals. And if what you have doesn't sound like that, then maybe, just maybe, it's time to stop fighting to be loved and start walking toward what you truly deserve. Because your soul was never meant to beg where it's supposed to be celebrated.